Admiral Joshua Adams stood on the bridge of the USS Endeavour, his eyes focused on the holographic display that detailed the unfolding chaos. The Galactic Council had long underestimated Earth's military capabilities, viewing humanity as a fledgling species just beginning to explore the vastness of space. But today, they would learn the true extent of human ingenuity and resolve. The Andorian outpost on Epsilon Theta had been a thorn in Earth's side for months, a secret staging ground for raids on human shipping lanes, disguised under a veil of neutrality. The Andorians believed their technological superiority would keep them safe, but they had made a grave miscalculation. Joshua had anticipated their arrogance, and his plan was already in motion. As the Andorian negotiator Corvus stood in the same room, his face twisted in anger, watching in horror as human commandos tore through his soldiers like a scythe through wheat, Joshua remained impassive. The negotiation was a mere formality, a distraction while his strike team executed the real mission. "This is an act of war," Corvus sputtered, his earlier smugness evaporating as he realized the gravity of the situation. "No," Joshua replied, his voice cold and steady. "This is the consequence of your deception. You thought we wouldn't find out about your little base? You've been staging raids on our shipping lanes for months, and now you'll face the repercussions." The view screen displayed live footage from the helmet cams of Joshua's soldiers as they breached the Andorian command center. The Andorians fought valiantly, but they were unprepared for the brutal efficiency of Earth's elite forces. Within minutes, the outpost was secured, the Andorian threat neutralized. Corvus had no choice but to comply with Joshua's demands. The immediate withdrawal of all Andorian forces from contested sectors, reparations for the lives and property they had destroyed, and a solemn vow to never again interfere with human interests in that region of space. The Andorians' defeat sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council, igniting a firestorm of debate across 100 worlds. For years, humanity had been seen as a minor player, a species of primitives only recently stepping into the galactic arena. But now, faced with undeniable evidence of Earth's military prowess, the established powers were forced to reassess their views. Some, like the Territes, saw humans as dangerous upstarts who needed to be contained at all costs. Others, like the Arcturians, saw an opportunity, a potential alliance with Earth that could shift the balance of power in their favor. The council chambers became a battlefield of words, as representatives from across the galaxy argued over how to respond to the human threat. Kalok, the Territe representative, was the most vocal opponent, his deep voice booming across the chamber as he called for immediate sanctions and a military blockade against Earth. "The humans are a menace!" he roared, his fists pounding on the podium. "They are violent, unpredictable, and utterly disrespectful of the established order. If we do not act now, they will plunge the galaxy into chaos." Across the floor, Zeus, the Arcturian diplomat, rose to his feet, his robes shimmering in the artificial light. "The honorable representative from Terite speaks from fear, not reason," Zeus said calmly. "Yes, the humans have demonstrated their strength, but they have also shown a willingness to negotiate and cooperate. An alliance with Earth could bring stability and progress to the Council." As the debate raged on, Joshua sat in his quarters aboard the Endeavour, the weight of recent events pressing heavily on him. A chime at the door interrupted his thoughts, and Major Wexler, the leader of the Epsilon Theta strike team, entered. "Admiral, we've received word from Andor. The Council has imposed a complete trade embargo on Earth, and they're mobilizing their fleets along our borders," Wexler reported, his voice grim. Joshua frowned, his mind racing. "What of our agents on the ground? Have they reported any unusual activity?" "Yes, sir," Wexler replied. "The Territes have dispatched assassins to target our leadership, while the Arcturians are reaching out with a proposal for an alliance." Joshua nodded, knowing that the next moves would be critical. Far from the halls of power, in the underbelly of a frontier space station, a shadowy figure known only as the Broker watched the news feeds with a calculating eye. The chaos between Earth and the Council was the perfect opportunity for the Broker, who thrived in the shadows, manipulating events for profit and power. The Broker activated a secure comm channel, the signal heavily encrypted. "The pieces are in motion," the distorted voice whispered. "Prepare our assets. It's time to make our move." In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, the debate continued to rage with growing intensity. Representatives from dozens of worlds shouted over one another, their voices a chaotic blend of fear, anger, and confusion. At the center of this maelstrom was Kalok, the Tarit representative, his tusks bared in a snarl as he pounded his fist on the podium. "We cannot allow these humans to destabilize the delicate balance of our galaxy," he thundered, his voice echoing through the vast hall. "They are a threat to everything we have built, to the peace we have maintained for centuries. We must act decisively and strike now before it's too late." Across the room, Zeus, the Arcturian diplomat, tried to maintain a semblance of calm, though even his luminous skin rippled with agitation. "We must not act out of fear," he urged, his voice steady but firm. "Yes, the humans have shown themselves to be formidable, but they have also shown that they are willing to negotiate, to find common ground. An alliance with Earth could bring us strength, stability, and progress that we have never before imagined." The chamber fell into a tense silence as the council members considered these words. But before any consensus could be reached, a chime interrupted the proceedings, signaling an urgent message. All eyes turned to the main view screen as it flickered to life, revealing the stern face of General Draven, Earth's most formidable military leader. His eyes burned with a fierce determination as he addressed the council. "I speak not only as a soldier, but as a defender of humanity," Draven began, his voice calm, yet carrying an undeniable undercurrent of power. "We have no intention of bowing to your threats or sanctions. Earth has earned its place among the stars, and we will defend that right with every ounce of strength we possess. Make no mistake, any aggression against us will be met with force." The council members exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of Draven's words sinking in. The general's reputation was legendary. His strategic genius and ruthless efficiency were known across the galaxy. The Tarit representative sneered, his tusks twitching with barely concealed contempt. "This is nothing but posturing," he spat, but the nervous murmurs that spread through the chamber suggested that not everyone shared his confidence. Far from the council chambers, in a secluded corner of Earth's military command center, Admiral Joshua Adams watched the broadcast with a heavy heart. Draven's speech, while necessary, had only served to escalate the tension. Joshua knew that the situation was spiraling out of control and that they were rapidly approaching a point of no return. A chime from his comm unit pulled him from his thoughts. The face of Sergeant Reyna appeared on the screen, her expression grim. "Admiral, we've uncovered something you need to see," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "It's worse than we thought. The Ascendancy has been funding black operations on a scale we never imagined. They're preparing for something big." Joshua's stomach tightened as he listened to Reyna's report. The evidence she presented painted a chilling picture: covert deals, massive arms shipments, and secret alliances all pointing to a single conclusion. Someone was orchestrating a large-scale conflict, and Earth was right in the crosshairs. Joshua nodded, his mind racing. "Continue your investigation, Sergeant. We need to know who is pulling the strings." As the connection closed, Joshua felt a deep unease settle over him. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that Earth was not just facing a military threat, but a carefully constructed web of intrigue designed to provoke and isolate them. In the shadowy underworld of a frontier space station, the broker sipped a fluorescent blue drink as he watched the developments unfold on the news feeds. The broker thrived on chaos, and the brewing conflict between Earth and the Galactic Council was a gold mine of opportunity. The broker's shadowy network of operatives, known as the Shadow Hand, was already moving into position, ready to exploit the situation for maximum profit and influence. With a satisfied smirk, the broker tapped a message into his encrypted communicator, instructing his agents to prepare for the next phase. Back on Earth, General Draven stood before a crowd of cheering supporters, his voice booming through the amplifiers. "For too long, we have been shackled by the dictates of alien powers," he declared, his eyes blazing with fervor. "But no more! We have proven our strength, and now it is time to claim our rightful place as masters of the stars." The crowd roared its approval, swept up in Draven's charisma. But not everyone was so easily swayed. In the shadows of the assembly, Sergeant Reyna watched with a growing sense of unease. She had seen the classified reports, knew that the situation was far more complex than Draven was letting on. As she made her way through the throngs of supporters, she resolved to uncover the real motives behind the conflict and find out just how deep the conspiracy ran. Meanwhile, in the council chambers, the debate over Earth's fate continued, with representatives from various factions jockeying for position and influence. Some argued for immediate military action, others for continued diplomacy, while a few advocated for more covert methods of dealing with the human problem. But as the debate wore on, it became increasingly clear that there was no easy solution. Earth was no longer a minor player on the galactic stage, and whatever decision the Council made would have far-reaching consequences. Amidst the chaos and confusion, one thing was certain: the galaxy was teetering on the brink of a conflict that could reshape the balance of power forever. As the council members filed out of the chamber, their faces etched with worry and doubt, a shadowy figure lingered in the darkened alcoves, watching and waiting. The broker smiled to himself, knowing that the real game had only just begun. The stage was set, the pieces were in motion, and soon the galaxy would be plunged into a high-stakes battle for survival, one that would test the very limits of human resolve and ingenuity. As the Galactic Council's session ended in tense silence, the weight of the decisions made hung heavily in the air. Representatives from various worlds filed out, their expressions a mix of concern and contemplation. Kalok, the Turret representative, was visibly satisfied, his tusks gleaming in the dim light as he conversed quietly with his aides. Across the room, Zeus, the Arcturian diplomat, watched the proceedings with a troubled gaze. The debate had exposed deep rifts within the council, and Zeus knew that these divisions could easily be exploited by those seeking to sow discord. As he left the chamber, Zeus made a mental note to reach out to his allies, both within and outside the council, to prepare for the turbulent times ahead. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Joshua Adams was deep in thought as he reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The revelations from Sergeant Reyna had only confirmed his worst fears. The Ascendancy was moving rapidly, and their plans were far more advanced than anyone had anticipated. Joshua knew that time was running out, and that Earth needed to act quickly if they were to prevent a full-scale galactic war. He was interrupted by a knock on the door of his office. "Enter," he called, straightening in his chair. The door slid open to reveal Major Wexler, the leader of the Epsilon Theta strike team. "Admiral," Wexler began, his tone serious, "we've received some disturbing news. Our sources on the ground have reported increased activity in the Terran and Andorian sectors. It appears they are mobilizing their fleets, possibly in preparation for an attack." Joshua frowned, his mind racing. "We need to be ready for anything," he said, his voice firm. "Get our forces on high alert and begin preparations for a possible preemptive strike. If they think they can catch us off guard, they're in for a surprise." Wexler nodded and quickly left the room to carry out his orders. As Joshua watched him go, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being manipulated, that someone was pulling the strings behind the scenes, pushing the galaxy towards a conflict that no one truly wanted. He reached for his comm unit and activated a secure channel. "This is Admiral Adams," he said, his voice low and urgent. "I need to speak with Sergeant Reyna immediately." Far from Earth, on the fringes of known space, the broker leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. His network of operatives had done their job well, planting seeds of doubt and fear within the Galactic Council and Earth's leadership. The broker knew that chaos was his greatest ally, and that in the coming conflict there would be countless opportunities for profit and power. He activated a secure communication line, his voice distorted by a scrambler. "Everything is proceeding as planned," he said, his tone calm and measured. "Prepare our assets for deployment. It's time to make our move." In the darkened corridors of a hidden facility deep within the Andorian sector, shadowy figures moved with purpose. They were members of the Ascendancy's elite strike force, handpicked for their loyalty and ruthlessness. At the center of the facility, General Draven stood before a massive holographic display, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. The screen showed the positions of various fleets, both human and alien, and the intricate web of alliances and rivalries that connected them. Draven knew that the key to victory lay in exploiting these divisions, turning allies against each other and isolating Earth from any potential support. He smiled coldly as he gave the order to proceed. "Begin Phase 1, he commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. "It's time to show the galaxy what true power looks like." Back on Earth, Sergeant Reyna was on the move, her mind focused on the mission at hand. She had uncovered disturbing evidence of a secret project known only as Omega Protocol, and she was determined to find out what it was and who was behind it. As she navigated the labyrinthine corridors of Earth's military headquarters, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Reyna's instincts, honed by years of combat experience, told her that danger was close. But she pressed on, knowing that the information she carried could change the course of the war. Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the building, throwing Reyna off her feet and filling the corridor with smoke and debris. Alarms blared as emergency lights flickered to life, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Reyna scrambled to her feet, her hand instinctively reaching for her sidearm. She could hear the sound of boots pounding on the floor, getting closer with each passing second. She quickly assessed her surroundings, her training kicking in as she formulated a plan. There was no time to waste. She needed to get the intel to Admiral Adams, no matter the cost. As Reyna moved through the smoke-filled corridors, she came face to face with a squad of heavily armed soldiers, their faces hidden behind visors. They were not wearing Earth military uniforms. Reyna's heart raced as she realized that these were Ascendancy operatives, sent to eliminate her before she could expose their plans. Without hesitation, she fired her weapon, the corridor lighting up with flashes of gunfire. The operatives returned fire, and Reyna ducked behind a pillar for cover. She knew she was outnumbered and outgunned, but she refused to back down. In the chaos, Reyna activated her comm unit, her voice barely above a whisper. "Admiral, this is Reyna. I've been compromised. Omega Protocol is bigger than we thought. They're coming for you next. You have to—" Her message was cut off by a burst of static as another explosion tore through the building, the force of the blast knocking her to the ground. Miles away, Admiral Joshua Adams listened to the fragmented transmission with growing dread. He knew that Reyna was in grave danger and that time was running out. "Get me Major Wexler," he ordered, his voice tight with urgency. "We need to extract Sergeant Reyna and secure that intel now." As his orders were relayed, Joshua couldn't help but feel a deep sense of foreboding. The pieces were falling into place, and the true scale of the threat was becoming clear. The Ascendancy was not just planning a military strike. They were orchestrating a galaxy-wide conspiracy, and Earth was at the center of it. As the minutes ticked by, Joshua's mind raced with possibilities. He knew that they were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before, one that was willing to go to any lengths to achieve their goals. He also knew that they were running out of time. The Ascendancy was moving quickly, and every second they delayed brought the galaxy closer to the brink of war. With a deep breath, Joshua steeled himself for what lay ahead. He knew that the coming days would test his resolve, and that the decisions he made would determine the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. In the depths of space, aboard a sleek and silent vessel, the broker watched as his plans continued to unfold. He knew that the galaxy was on the edge of a precipice, and that a single misstep could send it tumbling into chaos. But that was exactly what he wanted. In the chaos, there was opportunity, and the broker intended to seize it with both hands. As he stared out into the infinite darkness, a slow smile spread across his face. The game was just beginning, and he was confident that he would emerge as the victor. After all, in the shadows, he was the one who held all the cards. The galaxy teetered on the brink of chaos as the various factions moved with increasing urgency, each racing to secure their position before the inevitable conflict erupted. On Earth, Admiral Joshua Adams stood at the center of the storm, his mind grappling with the enormity of the challenges before him. The intelligence gathered by Sergeant Reyna had confirmed their worst fears. The Ascendancy's plans were far more advanced than anyone had anticipated, and their reach extended into the very heart of the Galactic Council. As he pored over the latest reports, Joshua's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Major Wexler. The Major's face was lined with tension, his expression grim. "Admiral, we've managed to retrieve Sergeant Reyna," Wexler began, his voice heavy with the weight of his words. "But the situation is worse than we feared. The Ascendancy has been working on something called Omega Protocol, and it's not just a weapon, It's a hybrid soldier, integrating AI with human hosts. They've already begun deploying these units in key locations across the galaxy. Joshua felt a chill run down his spine. The implications of such a development were staggering. If the Ascendancy could field an army of these Omega hybrids, they could potentially turn the tide of any battle, overwhelming even the most advanced military forces with their enhanced capabilities. We need to find a way to neutralize these hybrids before they can be fully deployed, Joshua said, his mind already racing with possible strategies. Get our best scientists and strategists on this immediately. We need a countermeasure, and we need it fast. Wexler nodded and left to carry out his orders, leaving Joshua alone with his thoughts once more. The weight of command had never felt heavier. The Ascendancy was not only manipulating the Galactic Council, but also threatening to unleash a force that could potentially devastate entire civilizations. Joshua knew that the decisions he made in the coming days would be crucial in determining the fate of Earth and the wider galaxy. As Joshua contemplated his next move, his comm unit beeped with an incoming message. It was Sergeant Reyna, her voice still weak from her ordeal but filled with determination. Admiral, I've managed to recover some data from the Omega facility before we were compromised. It's not much, but it might give us a lead on how to stop them. Good work, Sergeant, Joshua replied, relief evident in his voice. We'll analyze the data and see if we can find a way to turn the tide in our favor. In the meantime, I want you to focus on recovering. We're going to need every able-bodied soldier for what's coming. As the transmission ended, Joshua turned his attention back to the larger picture. The Galactic Council was in disarray, the various factions vying for power and influence as they tried to navigate the rapidly changing landscape. Earth's allies were growing increasingly nervous, unsure of how to respond to the Ascendancy's aggressive moves. And all the while, the broker continued to operate in the shadows, pulling strings and orchestrating events to his own advantage. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, the tension was palpable. Representatives from dozens of worlds argued and debated, their voices rising in a cacophony of fear and anger. At the center of the chamber, Kalok, the Terite representative, stood with his arms crossed, a smug expression on his face. He had been pushing for stronger sanctions against Earth, and with each passing day, his influence grew. Across the room, Zeus, the Arcturian diplomat, watched the proceedings with a wary eye. He knew that the current state of affairs was unsustainable, that the galaxy was careening towards a conflict that could tear it apart. But despite his best efforts to mediate and find common ground, the divisions within the Council only seemed to deepen. It was as if an unseen force was driving them towards war, stoking their fears and prejudices for its own ends. As the debate raged on, Zeus received a discreet message on his personal comm unit. It was from one of his contacts within the broker's network, a source he had cultivated over the years. The message was brief but alarming. The Ascendancy was preparing to launch a full-scale assault on Earth using the Omega hybrids as their spearhead. The attack could come at any moment, and the Galactic Council was completely unprepared to deal with the consequences. Zeus knew he had to act quickly. He discreetly left the chamber and made his way to a secure communication room. Once there, he contacted Admiral Joshua Adams, relaying the urgent information he had just received. "Admiral, the situation is dire," Zeus said, his voice tense. "The Ascendancy is planning to strike Earth with their Omega hybrids. If they succeed, the consequences could be catastrophic." Joshua absorbed the news with a grim nod. "Thank you for the warning, Zeus. We're already working on a countermeasure, but we'll need all the help we can get. If you have any influence within the Council, now is the time to use it. We need to delay their attack and buy ourselves some time." "I'll do what I can," Zeus promised. "But be careful, Admiral. There are forces at play here that even I don't fully understand. The Ascendancy is just one piece of the puzzle. The broker is still out there, and I fear he has his own agenda." With that, the connection ended, leaving Joshua to contemplate the enormity of the task ahead. The Ascendancy was on the move, and the broker's machinations were pushing the galaxy ever closer to the brink. Joshua knew that he had to stay one step ahead if he was to have any hope of protecting Earth and preventing a full-scale galactic war. As the hours passed, the tension across the galaxy continued to build. In hidden bases and secretive strongholds, preparations were underway for the coming conflict. The Ascendancy's fleets were mobilizing, their Omega hybrids ready for deployment. On Earth, military forces were being placed on high alert, their commanders bracing for the inevitable assault. And in the shadows, the broker watched it all unfold, his plans moving closer to fruition with each passing moment. But even as the storm clouds gathered, there were still those who believed that peace was possible, that the galaxy could be saved from the brink. Admiral Joshua Adams was one of them, and he knew that the time had come to make a stand. As he prepared to lead Earth's forces into battle, he resolved to fight not just for survival, but for the future of the galaxy itself. In the depths of space, aboard his flagship, Joshua stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars, the calm before the storm. He knew that in a matter of hours, those same stars would be filled with the fire of battle, the fate of millions hanging in the balance. But for now, there was only silence, the vast emptiness of space stretching out before him. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battle to come. "All stations, report," Joshua ordered, his voice carrying the weight of command. The bridge crew responded with practiced efficiency, each officer confirming that their systems were operational and ready for combat. Joshua nodded in satisfaction, knowing that they were as prepared as they could be. As the final preparations were made, Joshua allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought of the people he was fighting to protect, of the worlds that would be spared from the horrors of war if they succeeded. He thought of the sacrifices that would be made, the lives that would be lost in the struggle to secure a future for humanity. And he thought of the legacy they would leave behind, the mark they would make on the galaxy. With a final nod, Joshua turned to his crew, his expression resolute. "It's time," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Prepare for battle. We fight for Earth, for the galaxy, and for the future. Let's make sure it's a future worth fighting for." As the orders were given and the fleet moved into position, Joshua felt a surge of determination. The odds were stacked against them, but he knew that they had one advantage that the Ascendancy did not: the will to fight for what was right. It was a small thing, perhaps, in the grand scheme of the galaxy, but it was enough. As the first enemy ships appeared on the sensors, Joshua took a deep breath and prepared for the fight of his life. The silence of space shattered as the first volley of plasma fire streaked across the void, illuminating the darkness with deadly brilliance. Admiral Joshua Adams stood firm on the bridge of his flagship, the USS Endeavor, his eyes locked on the tactical displays that painted a grim picture of the battle unfolding around them. The Ascendancy's fleet, a formidable armada of warships bristling with advanced weaponry and Omega hybrids, bore down on Earth's defenses with relentless precision. "All ships, hold formation," Joshua commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around him. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, their faces etched with determination as they carried out their orders. The tension was palpable, the air thick with the weight of the impending clash. Joshua knew that every decision he made in the next few minutes could determine the outcome of the battle, and with it, the fate of Earth. As the enemy fleet closed in, the first wave of Earth's fighters launched from the hangars, streaking toward the Ascendancy's ships in a daring attempt to disrupt their formation. The space between the two fleets erupted into a maelstrom of laser fire and exploding hulls, the small craft weaving through the barrage with reckless abandon. Joshua watched the tactical readouts closely, his mind racing as he calculated the best way to exploit any weaknesses in the enemy's strategy.